Thank you for your comments, Rabbi, and thank you for this honor. This is a tough act to follow. Jeez. I wonder if we could start with just some background about the Chief Rabbi's office, how it developed historically, how it's chosen, and what your role and responsibilities are. Why do you have one and we don't?
Well, look, you know, there was a little matter of 1776, and whatever the Brits had, the Americans didn't want, and quite rightly. And quite seriously, England has an established church. It has an Archbishop of Canterbury. So you have this idea in Britain that things are centralized, whereas the American idea is things are decentralized, federalized, local autonomy. And that made America the incredibly dynamic country it is. But it also means that there's no one leader for the various religions, so it followed that there was no one chief rabbi. The office of the chief rabbi gradually emerged from 1692 when the first Ashkenazim came to Britain. The Sephardim came just 1 year after Jews came to America in 1656. But in general, it kind of developed, especially in the 19th century, from 1845 onwards. Jews needed, the British government needed one person to deal with on behalf of the Jewish community. And since the Jewish community was defined not as an ethnic community, but as a religious community, they needed a religious leader of the community with whom they could relate.
Interesting. I want to get to the book. It's a really eloquent explanation of how science and religion can and should coexist. How do we get other faiths to get on board with that? Here in Texas, for example, we have a lot of people who reject evolution on grounds of the Bible, or who think climate change is nothing to worry about, or a hoax because God just won't let it happen. How do we get them on board with this Jewish philosophy?
Well, look, there are Jewish thinkers who don't agree with evolution, and Jews in general did not lay down the law on this. What's important is to believe that God created the world, that God continues to relate to the world, creation, revelation, redemption. But we didn't make an ideology on how old is the universe. Is it 13.7 billion years old? Is it 5,773 years old? Yehuda Halevi and Maimonides both said that if you could prove the eternity of matter, which is what Aristotle believed, then they would simply reinterpret Bereshit, Genesis, in line with that. So they were much more radical. They were willing to think the world might have been eternal, not just 13.7 billion years old. I happen to believe that Charles Darwin may have stumbled on the most beautiful religious truth of all. Because if evolution is true, then it tells us that God made creation creative. And that's a very beautiful idea, that life develops and evolves. And you will find that in some of the medieval commentators on the last word of the creation narrative in Genesis. What is it? All that God had created to make. The word to make, seems superfluous here, and some understood it as to evolve. God created the universe and allowed it to evolve. So I don't see evolution as incompatible with Genesis. As for, what was the other one? Climate change. Well, there's a wonderful midrash which says that when God created the universe, he said to Adam, look at this beautiful universe that I've made, and I have made it all for you. So be careful not to destroy what I have made, because if you do, there will be no one left to repair it. If you could explain that to some of your friends, I think that might be useful.
So how do we break through and sell your book out there in the fundamentalist?
Oh gosh, we don't have that kind of thing in England, I have to say. But you know, I hope that when they read this, that some of these ideas are actually deeply spiritual ideas, really spiritual ideas. Supposing God waited not one day, but billions of years for human beings to emerge, does that not tell us that God is a lot more patient than we thought he was? You know, there's some wonderful ideas here, and they're very spiritual. And I think it's a very sort of Christian thing, not a Jewish thing, to read the Bible literally. We always read the written law together with the oral law. We always read the biblical text with commentaries. So we never assume that you can just open a page of the Bible, read it in English or some other translation, and instantly understand it. We are not fundamentalists in that sense.
I wanted to ask about that, because you say in the book that in Judaism, the oral law is just as important as written law. And I wonder if a lot of Jews who focus more on the Torah really appreciate that concept. Could you discuss that some?
I mean, this was the crucial issue that divided Jews in the Second Temple times. There were Pharisees, the group of the people who believed in the oral law, and there were the Sadducees who only believed in the written law. The Sadducees in the Second Temple period were the more powerful group. They were the elite. They were the circles involved in the royal court, the Hasmonean kings, the temple. They were the upper class, and the Pharisees were the lower class. And yet, who survived? Only the Pharisees, who became the rabbis, who became us. Of the Sadducees, they just disappeared. So Judaism without the oral law never survives.
The book talks a lot about the divide between people of faith and atheists. And I wonder, what about people in the middle, including a lot of young people especially, who lack that certainty in either direction? Where should they turn, and what should they learn to further their understanding?
Well, what they should, look, it's been said earlier this evening about the wonderful work in education here in Dallas. Our young people, they know their science. They read their cosmology and their physics and their biology. They are very secularly literate. But let's even the odds. I mean, let them be Jewishly literate as well. We were the people who survived for thousands of years because every child learned Torah, learned the commentaries. You're 5, you start learning Torah. You're 13, you start learning Mishnah and Gemara. Every Jew was literate in his or her faith. Even when the whole of Europe was steeped in ignorance and illiteracy, Jews were literate. Don't let us be Jewishly illiterate. Otherwise, the secular side will always win.
You can still question and be Jewishly literate.
Pardon?
You can still question.
You can't be Jewishly literate without questioning.
Hear, hear.
I have to tell you, it's a fascinating thing. We had a bit of a scandal about 20 years ago in British politics called cash for questions. Members of Parliament were being paid to ask questions in Parliament. And I said, that's the difference between the English and the Jews. The English, you have to pay to ask questions. Jews, you have to pay not to ask questions. The truth is that Socrates taught the young men of Athens to ask questions. And for that, the citizens of Athens condemned him to death for corrupting the young. So what in Athens was the biggest sin, in Jerusalem was the biggest virtue, and it is for all of us, because come Seder night, what is the lowest of the low? Mi she'eino yodea lishol, a Jewish child who isn't able to ask. And what do you do with a child who isn't able to ask? At petachlo, you teach the child how to ask. We are the most questioning faith in the whole of history, I think. And that is what makes the Jewish mind very special. It's no accident. Yeah, I said to Richard Dawkins, and the late Christopher Hitchens used to say this as well. He used to say, religion is a form of child abuse. You teach your children to be religious, you're teaching them to be stupid. So I said to Richard, in the course of my television program, that the BBC chose not to show that bit, I said, Richard, you always say we should judge things on the evidence, right? He said, yes, right. I said, well, Richard, you think religion makes people stupid, right? He said, yes, right. So I said, Richard, you know that Jews represent 1/5 of 1% of the population of the world. So how is it that they won 20% of the Nobel Prizes in chemistry, 26% of the Nobel Prizes in physics, 27% in medicine, and 41% in economics? He said, did they really? Wow.
Just lucky.
Judaism, he said, and he says this on television, you can see it, Judaism must be different. And from the world's biggest atheist to give a compliment to Judaism, you know, we accept compliments wherever they come from.
There's a great line in the book that I really took to heart. That you said that religion is like a fire. It can warm you or it can burn you. Could you expand on that?
Religion enlists our passions. And those can be wonderful, good passions. All the things that you do here in Dallas, all the things Jews do wherever they're Jews, tzedakah, social action, chesed, helping people in need, within and beyond the community. But religion can sometimes flame hatreds. You see how country after country in the Middle East, in Syria, in Egypt, in Lebanon, in Libya, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, whole nations tearing themselves apart. So religion can speak to the best of us, religion can speak to the worst of us. And we have to be very careful to make sure religion speaks to what Abraham Lincoln called the better angels of our nature.
On a personal note, not every chief rabbi retires. Popes
they once asked one
Popes never do.
Yeah, they once asked one of my predecessors, how long do chief rabbis serve? You know, Rabbi J.H. Hertz of the Hertz Chumash. He gave a wonderful reply. He said, dear boy, chief rabbis never retire and only very rarely die.
Hope you plan one and not the other here. What?
Yeah.
do you have plans after your term is finished?
I have served Anglo Jury together with Elaine for 22 years, every day of which has been a privilege. It's a great, great community, and it's been unbelievably creative as well. And we just feel, though, that in a global age, we all need to connect to one another. Kol Yisrael Arevin Ze B'Ze. You know, the human brain is the most remarkable thing in the entire universe, not because it's big, but because of the multiple connections between all the neurons. And so it is with the Jewish people. We're not that big, but the connections between us are absolutely incredible. So we are a global people, and therefore, you know, somebody who aspires, like I do, to be a teacher of Torah, an educator of our educators, there comes a point when you say, I've got to go a little bit more global. And so I hope I'll be spending a bit more time in the States in the future.
We'll see you back.
And we'll hopefully come back, yeah.
Okay, I think we need to wrap up. Let me ask a couple of things very quickly. A lot of people in Dallas are very much Anglophiles. We love Downton Abbey and James Bond and Monty Python and William and Kate and the royal scandals and all the rest. So I've always wondered, when the Queen needs a rabbi, is there a bat phone or a hotline, or how does she get in touch with you?
A message shimmers down from heaven. No, no, the connections between us are very open and very warm. The Queen is absolutely wonderful for the Jewish community. Prince Philip, absolutely incredible human being, you know, over 90 years old and still very sprightly. You know that the Queen celebrated her Diamond Jubilee earlier this summer, and she assembled, there's certain groups in Britain, of whom Jews are one, are privileged to deliver a royal address. It's too complicated to explain, but they're about certain universities, certain trades and professions, and we presented her with a royal address. And we thought it might be nice to give her the traditional Jewish blessing of bis 120. So we said, may you be well until 120. And the Queen had evidently never heard this expression before. And she turned and grinned at Prince Philip, who grinned back. After the ceremony, when we were at the reception, Prince Philip came up to me and said, does that mean I've got to put up with this lot for another 30 years? True story.
I expect you meant it too.
They're absolutely wonderful. Prince Charles, very warm personal friend to Elaine and myself. And I want you to know two things, guys, because you may not know this. Number one, Prince Charles is the only member of the royal family to have visited Israel in an official capacity. I know because I flew back with him from that occasion, but a very sad occasion. He was there for the funeral of Yitzhak Rabin. And we flew back together, and the Queen's plane goes extremely slowly. So we spent 8 hours together, and we learned Torah together. And we began a wonderful, warm friendship. And nobody in America knows this, I suspect. But as a result of that friendship, Prince Charles did a very interesting thing. A couple of years later, he actually asked, could he come to a synagogue? And he came and joined us in the St. John's Wood Shul for Mariv, the most senior member of the royal family who has ever attended a synagogue service. And incidentally, this was not a low-profile visit because the whole service was televised and shown on British national television. And you may be interested to know what the occasion was. And this was not us asking him, it was him asking us. He came to Shul for the 50th anniversary of Medinat Yisrael. Yom HaAtzmaut. So that is Prince Charles, that's the royal family. A tremendous, tremendous institution, and we are very blessed by them. And Kate is Kalana v'chasuda, nice young lady, and Vivisha, Muslim, brocha, and alla gute Sachen. Yeah.
Well, one last thing, and we'll let you go. Do you have a favorite Jewish joke?
Favorite Jewish joke? Oh, wow. I tried to tell them all this evening. Do I know another joke? I don't know another joke. But I actually quite like English jokes. Because the English can kind of lacerate you so gently, you don't even notice it. And so, you know, having studied at both Oxford and Cambridge universities, I love the comment of one academic about another. This is known as an English put-down. He said, on the surface, he's profound, but deep down, he's superficial.
On that note, on behalf of everyone, I want to thank you so much for being here, and it's a great honor, and please come again.
What a wonderful evening. We hope that you enjoyed tonight's program and that you will join us for an upcoming Federation event. Again, our heartfelt thanks to Janie and Ron for all that you do and for allowing us the opportunity to appreciate all that you do. Rabbi Sachs, we are deeply honored that you came to Dallas. Rabbi.
Oh! Can I be JR?
We cannot
we need a new one. Absolutely.
We cannot think of a more fitting gift than to provide you with a genuine Texas Stetson cowboy hat.
What do you think? Is it Rabbonish?
Wear it in good health, and think of us when you do. And we, again, appreciate that you've been here, and you will think of your night in our Celebrating Jewish Education in Dallas. Just one important note, please. If you want to purchase a book and to have the Chief Rabbi sign your book, please remain seated in the audience, in the auditorium, and you'll be escorted by groups into the lobby for the book signing. We need to do it in groups because the lobby is small. So again, please remain seated in the auditorium if you would like to purchase a book and have it signed. Thank you again for coming tonight and supporting Jewish education in Dallas.